Hello dear students, good evening. Welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu news analysis. So today is 1st June 2024 and in this discussion we have few important articles and they're very important and relevant for our examination. So without any delay, let's try to discuss all those important articles. And before discussing them, you all knew that we have few important questions that I have given for your practice in yesterday's class, and today also I have a very important practice question for all of you. So let's try to solve yesterday's practice question. That yesterday I have given one practice question is with respect to the Amrut mission. So this is Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation 2.0 or Amrut mission. Now, the first statement says that the Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation 2.0 was launched in the year 2021, and this is absolutely correct statement because earlier the Amrut 1.0 program was launched in the year 2015 by the NDA government after it came to the power, specifically for the development of the urban areas. Now, development in the urban areas actually includes sanitation, drinking water. So all those facilities would be provided in the urban areas under this Amrut program, and this Amrut 2.0 program was launched by the government in the year 2021. So therefore the first statement is absolutely correct, and I have the second statement also. Amrut 2.0 aims to develop water secure cities by providing functional water tap connections to all households in all the statutory towns in the country. So this second statement is also correct. So therefore the correct answer for this question is option C. Now remember, a few days back we have discussed about this Amrut program as one of the article that was given in the Hindu newspaper, right? So this question is essentially based from that particular editorial, right? So Amrut mission is also known as Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation. This is Amrut, and it was launched in 25th June 2025. Now remember, we are talking about Amrut 1.0. So Amrut 1.0 or Amrut program that was earlier launched in the year 2015 in selected 500 cities, towns across the country. Okay. So however, the mission focuses on, so Amrut mission essentially focuses on providing all basic infrastructure in the selected cities and towns across the country. Now, what are the sectors which are being involved or which are being covered under this Amrut program? The sectors include water supply, sewerage management, septage management, stormwater drainage, green spaces, parks, and non-motorized urban transportation. So all these categories would be improved or taken part of the Amrut program. However, the purpose of Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation 2.0 or Amrut mission is to ensure that every household across the country has access to the tap with assured supply of water and even the sewerage connection also. However, recently the Union government has launched Amrut 2.0 program, and this is also known as Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation 2.0, right? So this scheme was launched on 1st October 2021 for the period of 5 years, right? So up to 2026, since it was launched in 2021, so it was a 5-year period program from financial year 2021-22 to financial year 25-26. So Amrut 2.0 is designed to provide universal coverage of water supply through the functional taps to all households in all statutory towns across the country, right? So therefore, according to this explanation, both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct in the question that I've given to you in yesterday's class. Now today also I have one more important practice question for all of you. The question is Space Telescope Mission Ultraviolet Transient Astronomy Satellite. So this is also known as UltraSat, right? So UltraSat. So this UltraSat, which will investigate the secrets of high short duration events in the universe, is being developed by which of the following countries? Option A, Israel. Option B is France. Option C, Italy, and option D, Japan. So please answer this question in the comment section, and please everyone answer this question in the comment section. I'll provide you the correct answer in tomorrow's class. So without any delay, let's start our discussion with few important articles that were covered in the Hindu newspaper. And first article that we are going to start this discussion is with the urban heat islands, right? So urban heat island. So urban heat island effect, especially in Chennai. Now, during summer 2024, India is under the severe heat wave conditions. So everyone knew about that. But when we talk about the severe heat wave conditions, no doubt that climate change is one factor which is responsible for the severe heat wave condition. So along with climate change, the urban areas are also responsible for the increasing intensity of these heat wave conditions. So why urban areas are responsible? Now, if you look at most of the urban areas in our country, so they are also known as concrete jungles, and these urban development is unsustainable in its character. So due to the unsustainable nature of urban development, most of these buildings in the urban areas, they actually trap heat, and thereby making these urban areas as heat islands or urban heat islands, as they absorb a lot of heat and they further intensify the heat wave condition, and this would result in higher mortality, morbidity, or increasing temperatures, making cities non-livable. However, so if we look at the total India's population who are living in the urban areas, so 29% of India's population lives in urban areas, and according to the UN Habitat estimates, it is expected that India's population, around 40% of India's population, would live in urban areas by 2030 also. Now, the population in urban areas is increasing, but the infrastructure in urban areas is not increasing, and at the same time, the development is very often known as unsustainable development in these urban centers. So that has resulting in increasing intensity and frequency of these heat waves and causing several negative consequences on the lives of the people who are living in these urban areas. Okay, now I've briefly explained the background of this particular editorial. Now we'll try to understand the context. So the context is that the year 2023 so is considered as one of the hottest ever that that planet Earth has experienced. So with the global average temperatures reaching 1.45 degrees Celsius higher than the pre-industrial levels. Now in this context also, I would link this particular statement with the Paris Summit of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, right? So we talked about the Paris Summit. Now Paris Summit essentially aimed at limiting the increase in global temperatures below 2 degrees Celsius pre-industrial levels, and if it is possible, we limit the global temperatures by 1.5 degrees Celsius. However, so it is not possible because we already reached 1.45 degrees Celsius of pre-industrial levels, and that is being evident from the data of World Meteorological Organization and in fact Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change also indicating that the global temperatures are increasing at a faster pace. So this increase in the global temperatures, especially reaching the average global temperatures 1.45 degrees Celsius pre-industrial levels, worsening the existing climate impacts, and this thing has also been creating a heat wave like condition which is sweeping through the Indian subcontinent. So in fact, cities like Chennai are particularly affected due to these urban heat island. Now, Chennai is not just an exception, but Delhi, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Bangalore, a number of other cities which are overcrowded, those cities have been facing the brunt of the urban heat island effect or unsustainable development of the urban areas. Now in this context, we'll briefly understand what exactly is this urban heat island effect that is experienced in our urban areas. So this is actually we call it as urban heat island. Now urban heat island is a phenomenon where the temperatures in large and crowded urban settings. Now we'll take Delhi as an example here, right? So Delhi is a large city and it is an overcrowded city, right? So Delhi is a large and overcrowded urban setting. So they are having several higher degrees or degrees higher than the surrounding rural areas. Now if you look at the overall temperatures, recently it is said that Delhi, Mungesh Puri has recorded 52 degrees Celsius of temperature. And not just that, the average temperatures in Delhi during the summers ranging from 47 to 48 degrees Celsius. Now if you compare Delhi's temperatures with the nearby rural areas, so Delhi has been experiencing the higher degree temperatures. However, there are certain factors which have been contributing to the higher temperatures in Delhi. So what are those factors? So they include the concrete structure which are built in these urban areas. So because of that reason, urban areas are very often known as the concrete jungles, right? So they are very often known as concrete jungles. And apart from that, the roads, and there's a lack of green spaces in these urban areas, right? So space in urban areas is a constraint. Wherever there are plants or wherever there are green spaces, they are being either encroached or cleared in those urban areas. And in fact, the waste management, especially when the landfill sites are being burnt, and they also release a lot of emissions into the environment and the pollutants. So all these factors actually absorb more and more heat, followed by the air conditioners and other machinery. So all these factors have been absorbing a lot of heat, and thereby comparatively increasing or relatively increasing the overall temperature of these urban centers in comparison to the number of other rural areas surrounding the urban centers. Now, what are the implications of the urban heat island impact? So we should also understand the basic impact of urban heat island impact. Now, in metropolitan cities like Chennai, so the urban heat island effect actually adding temperatures around 2 degrees Celsius to 4 degrees Celsius. Okay, so when you look at the temperatures in these metropolitan cities compared to the rural areas which are surrounding these metropolitan cities, the temperatures in major cities or the urban centers is more than 2 degrees Celsius or 4 degrees Celsius. Okay, so compared to the nearby rural areas. And apart from that, they are under a very high humidity conditions, and that has been further intensifying the heat wave condition. And these things are very often leading to the debilitating heat stress, exhaustion, and even the fatal heat stroke among the individuals. And it is also said that yesterday there are a number of people who are on the polling duty in the last phase of elections were died because of the severe heat wave conditions. And in fact, in India we have heat wave action plan also, but the problem is that these heat wave action plans are not properly implemented. There is no timely implementation of these heat wave action plan. And India has national level, state level, and even district level heat action plans. So the overall objective of this heat action plans is to reduce the morbidity and mortality from the heat wave conditions. Right, so with the climate change and human induced factors, heat wave is emerged as one of the new and emerging challenge. And this heat wave action plans at the different levels, the national level, state level, and even the district level, would actually reduce the morbidity and mortality from these heat waves. However, the problem is that the long-term measures are required or needed to deal with the urban heat island and reduce the urban heat across the country, and thereby providing a relief to the people who are living in these urban spaces. However, there are a number of measures which are being proposed to combat the urban heat island effect. What are those measures through which we can reduce the negative impact of the urban heat islands? So first and foremost, we need to talk about increasing the green cover in those urban areas. When we increase the green cover in those urban areas, such as forests, parks, trees, so they actually release a lot of moisture into the environment. Okay, so which evaporates, and over a period of time it cools down the environment also. For example, again I'm giving the example of Delhi. Now In Delhi, the problem is that due to urban heat island effect, the temperatures are increasing 2 degrees Celsius to 4 degrees Celsius compared to the nearby rural areas. Now, how can we mitigate the excess heat in Delhi? So one way through which we can mitigate the excess heat or urban heat island effect in Delhi is through increasing the green spaces across Delhi. Okay, so identify the forests, identify parks and places where the trees are located, promote afforestation because they release a lot of moisture. Okay, so these trees actually release a lot of moisture into the atmosphere, and the moisture would evaporate, and evaporation of this particular moisture would cools down the environment over a period of time. So increasing green covers in Chennai metropolitan city or any other metropolitan area to a well distributed 25% could significantly reduce the overall urban heat island impact, as it would reduce temperatures by around 1.5 degrees Celsius or more. Okay, so the urban heat island effect is actually increased in temperatures compared to the nearby rural areas when we increase the green spaces. So this significantly reduces the temperatures in the urban areas. Now after that, we should also look into the energy efficient air conditioning, and this is also one way through which we can mitigate the urban heat island impact. So for that, what we have to do, so we need to move towards energy efficient air conditioning. So this energy efficient air conditioning could actually reduce the urban heat island impact as much as 1.5 degree Celsius. And these energy savings can also accrue from switching off the air conditioners from mains rather than by remote control. Okay, so when we make our existing home appliances more and more energy efficient, so that would also significantly reduces the urban heat island impact. Now because of the excessive heat in urban spaces, most of the people are installing ACs, and these ACs are always turned on, and those ACs are also releasing a lot of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and they are also further increasing the temperatures in these urban areas. So that is also a major threat. And after that, we need to look after the green building codes and the public transportation system as a way through which we can reduce the urban heat island impact. Now how public transportation would reduce the urban heat island impact? Now in urban areas, there is a traffic congestion and vehicular emissions and pollutants, particulate matter 2.5 and particulate matter 10 is being released into the environment indiscriminately, and at the same time these pollutants and the emissions have been absorbing the heat, and that would significantly resulting in the increasing of temperatures in urban areas. Now when we promote the public transportation, so for example metropolitan cities like Bangalore, Mumbai, so public transportation is mostly based on the metro system. A metro system is a green system because it uses the electricity, and in fact cities like Delhi have introduced the electricity buses or electric buses. So all these factors, when we promote more and more public transportation, that would significantly reduces the emissions from these individual or private vehicles, and that will also significantly help reduce the urban heat island impact. And after that, the green building codes can also be implemented across these urban areas. Now what exactly are these green building codes? Now green building codes green building codes are with respect to construction of buildings in such a manner they would use less electricity, they would use less energy, and they would get a clear ventilation and clear air supply. Okay, so a natural based solutions would be customized through these green building codes. So buildings are better insulated and ventilated and constructed using the appropriate designs and appropriate materials according to these green building codes. And in fact, these buildings which were constructed through the green building codes, they require less air conditioning and they also generate less waste heat. and a sharp reduction in the personal private vehicles of individuals in urban areas through rapidly scaling up of effective public transportation. So with electric buses, metro systems would significantly reduce the urban heat island impact in urban areas. However, there are certain policy recommendations and future prospects also for this urban heat island impact. So, there should be a detailed maps and localized planning. So these things have to be promoted. Both detailed maps and localized planning plays a very, very important role in planning zoning of areas where there is a high vulnerability of urban heat island, so that we can anticipate and we can understand the threats posed by the excess heat. So the Chennai Metropolitan Development Authority, so that is CMDH, Chennai Metropolitan Development Authority, is preparing a detailed heat maps to aid in more localized planning and actions. Okay, so these localized planning and actions would actually help us reduce the urban heat island impact in these urban areas and also reducing the temperatures significantly. And apart from that, there are also comprehensive climate action plans. For example, Chennai's comprehensive climate action plan actually includes various methods which would combat the urban heat island impact, and that would also significantly improve the urban livability in the city, right? So the comprehensive climate action plan actually involves few things. So they are increasing the green cover by at least 25%, and at the same time adopting energy saving measures in air conditioning, and also significant dependence on the public transportation system would significantly reduces the urban heat island impact in most of these urban areas. And in fact, the authors have also been telling us that Chennai has the potential to set an example for rest of the country to deal with the urban heat island impact and reduce the intensity or increasing intensity of heat waves in Chennai. So by implementing these long-term policies that were already suggested and measures, Chennai can improve the livability, and at the same time it can also set a model for other Indian cities in addressing climate change and urban heat challenge. So in this, green building codes plays a very, very important role in reducing the intensity of heat waves and impact of the urban heat islands, because if temperatures continues to increase in urban areas, most of these urban centers are non-livable. Okay, so people cannot live in those urban centers. So it is a very necessity, or it is urgent to deal with the urban heat island impact. And the next a very important article is with respect to the recent Agnikul Cosmos. So that has successfully test fired semi-cryogenic engine based, so that is 3D printed engine, right? So yesterday I've also discussed that it is the world's first 3D designed single piece engine rocket. So that is known as Agni-Ban. So Agni-Ban is a rocket that is being developed by a startup Agnikul Cosmos. And in fact, this Agni-Ban marks a significant milestone in India's space technology. So why it is a significant milestone? Because this particular launch has highlighted the growing role of the private sector, private entities in the space exploration. And in fact, space as a sector has a lot of potential for the private sector or different players to come in and play a most important role. However, India is still lagging behind compared to several other countries like US. However, India is also catching up at a faster pace, and therefore this particular event by startup Agnikul Cosmos actually one of the most important event, because it has been highlighting the growing role of private entities in the space exploration and also the potential implications for India's commercial launch services or launch vehicle services in the future. Now we'll briefly understand what exactly is this Agnikul Cosmos and their Agni-Ban rocket. Okay, so this Agnikul Cosmos, as I have already told you, it is a space-based private startup in India. And in fact, it has recently conducted its test flight Okay, so through a rocket called Agniban, right? So its rocket is called as Agniban. And in fact, the flight was company's fifth attempt. So Agniban rocket launch is a fifth attempt by the Agnikul Cosmos, and in fact, the first four, launches of Agnikul Cosmos are being called off due to the suboptimal launch conditions that were existing, and in fact, this is the fifth launch. Now, what are the major features of this Agniban rocket? So, in fact, this Agniban is a two-stage and 14-ton launch vehicle. Right, so these are some of the characteristics of Agniban rocket. So it is a two-stage and 14-ton launch vehicle, and it is designed to lift small satellites into the low Earth orbits. Okay, so there are different orbits around the Earth. So therefore, it actually lifts small satellites into the low Earth orbits around the planet. So as I've already told you that Agniban rocket is a two-stage rocket. So both stages in this rocket are powered by bespoke semi-cryogenic engines, and many of the vehicle components, including this engine of this particular rocket, this is a single piece engine, and most of these components are 3D printed. And in fact, Agnikul Cosmos created a history that it is world's first 3D printed rocket, single piece rocket engine. And what will be the implications, positive implications for India's commercial launch services after the success of Agnikul Cosmos Agniban? So with the test flight, Agnikul took Agniban on its first steps. So it is now in its first steps, and it is moving towards a full-fledged launch vehicle. Right, this Agniban is actually moving towards a full-fledged launch vehicle, but now it is in its first steps, and the development could expand India's commercial launch services offering. And currently it is being dominated by the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. Okay, so most of the satellite launch services are being dominated by the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, and soon be joined by the Small Satellite Launch Vehicle, both of the Indian Space Research Organization. And what will be the major prospects beyond the commercial fortunes of this Agnikul Cosmos? So that is also very important to remember here. Now, the future prospects or the commercial fortune of this Agnikul Cosmos is a shared technical know-how. Shared technical know-how in the sense that ISRO and the scientists were actually trained. Okay, so actually trained. They have a shared technical know-how and provided physical systems for many private missions. Right, so which these startups are now testing. And this collaboration between ISRO and Agnikul Cosmos could potentially accelerate the innovation in the sector, in the space sector. Okay. So after that, there are certain lessons that ISRO can also learn, because ISRO so far has been testing a semi-cryogenic engine on its own. Right. So it has been trying to create a semi-cryogenic engine on its own. So that actually draw lessons from that ISRO can actually learn lessons from Agnikul Cosmos. Why? Because Agnikul Cosmos through Agniban rocket. Okay, so this Agniban rocket engine is a semi-cryogenic engine, and ISRO has also been planning to test a semi-cryogenic engine. Now, in this context, the government must ensure that the corresponding bureaucratic and legal frameworks encourage the free flow of knowledge between Agnikul Cosmos and ISRO and vice versa. However, there are a lot of benefits to innovation. There is no doubt about that. Because in April, ISRO developed engine nozzles which are being made of carbon-carbon composite. So this carbon-carbon composite engine nozzles would replace the columbium alloy nozzles on the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle's fourth stage. and this switch actually increased PSLV's payload capacity by around 15 kilograms. So payload capacity increasing 15 kilograms is not a small feat, or in fact it is one of the biggest achievement, because the total capacity of the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle is increased by 15 kilograms by innovation, right? So it has been demonstrating the spin-off effects and the benefits of innovation in the field of science and technology. So therefore, it is being emphasized that we have a lot of potential from our youth. So they can also play a very important role in the space sector. And we have seen a lot of private space firms in India are also having a lot of aspirations, and in fact ISRO is ready to extend all necessary cooperation to these space firms in future, so that they can make a great strides in the space arena, right? So in fact the excess burden on ISRO would also be reduced, because most of these private space firms would start engaging in the launch of satellites into the space, and ISRO will engage itself in several and key important missions and developing other essential technologies. So the next a very important article is the core sector output rises by 6.2% as electricity, steel, buoy. Now we'll understand in this particular article what is the core sector. Okay, so what is the core sector and what is this index of industrial production, who releases the data with respect to the core sector and index of industrial production. So what is this particular data about the core sector? And in fact India's infrastructure, which is considered as the core sector, output in April rose to 6.2% year on year, so quickening from revised 6% growth in March. So this was according to the government data. So it is backed by strong electricity and steel output across the country. So in fact there are 8 key infrastructure sectors across the country. So the 8 key infrastructure sectors growth has actually rose to 6.2% in April. So due to a healthy expansion in the production of natural gas, refinery products, electricity, according to the data. Okay, so after that the production of 8 sectors grow 6% in March, and now it is 6.2% in April. We try to understand very briefly what are these core sectors in the Indian economy, right? So in the index of industrial production, there are certain sectors which constitutes around 40% share in India's overall industrial production, and these 40% is contributed by 8 important core sectors. And these 8 core sectors in the industrial production are known as core sectors. Okay, so what are those 8 core sectors? They include electricity, steel, refinery products, crude oil, coal, cement, natural gas, and fertilizer, right? So in fact it is said that these 8 core sector comprises around 40.27% of the weight of total items which are being included in the index of industrial production. Okay, so these 8 core sectors actually constitute around 40.27% of the weightage of all the items which are included in the index of industrial production. Now, as I have already told you that there are 8 core sectors in the index of industrial production which constitute around 40.27% of the weightage. Now, if you look at the these 8 core industries in the declining order, first one is refinery products, which is having the highest weightage, followed by electricity, steel, coal, crude oil, natural gas, cement, and fertilizer. See, these are also changes over a period of time. So therefore, it is very important for you to remember this order of 8 core industries and regularly follow. How the weightage of these 8 core industries have regularly changing, because it was already asked by UPSC in previous year. Okay, so I think it was asked in 2015 by UPSC, so therefore it is very important. Now what exactly is this index of industrial production? So index of industrial production is an indicator, and this is an indicator which actually measures the changes in the volume of the production of industrial products, right? So for example, we have a different wide variety of industries in our country, right? So the all those industries, most important industries, are part of the index of industrial production, and this index of industrial production is an indicator that measures changes in the volume of production of industrial products during a given period. Okay, so how the industrial production has been changing over a period of time, that is being recorded in this index of industrial production. Now it is compiled and published monthly by the Central Statistical Organization, and this Central Statistical Organization is under the purview of Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, right? I hope it is clear for all of you. Now the production of electricity, natural gas, coal, steel, refinery products, crude oil, cement, they have actually recorded a positive growth in April, and because of that reason there is a 6.2% increase in the core industries of index of industrial production. Now what exactly is the significance of index of industrial production or the core sectors of the economy? So we'll understand the significance of the core sectors of the economy, right? So the core sector's performance is considered a very important and a very significant because it is considered as an indicator for country's overall economic and industrial development. And in fact, the core sector's performance is also served as a barometer. So through the core sector's performance we can assess the health of India's economy. How India's economy is performing can be assessed by the core sector's performance, because if core sector registers a positive growth rate, then we can also say that the health of the economy is also in a better condition. And in fact, the core sector can also predict the future economic trends as well. So for example, steel is a critical material, so that is used for the construction, automobiles and machinery, right? So steel is being used as a raw material for the construction, automobiles and machinery, and similar lines, electricity is also an essential for powering factories, homes and other businesses, right? So if there is a growth in the production of electricity and at the same time growth in the production of steel, so it would also aid in the growth and development of other all relevant and dependent sectors. And because of that reason we can actually assess the health of the economy by the performance of the core sector. And these core sector industries have a significant interconnections with one another, right? So this particular interdependence among all these core sectors creates a multiplier effect where changes in the core sector's growth or contraction impact the entire economy. So that is why it is very important to understand the core sectors and the total 8 core industries which are part of the core sector should be understood. Now the next very important article is with respect to fiscal deficit. So in this context it is very important for us to understand what exactly is fiscal deficit. Now fiscal deficit in the financial year 24 narrowed down to 5.6% on better tax mop-up. Now better tax mop-up in the sense that because of better tax collection, the fiscal deficit has come down to 5.6% in the financial year to 2024. Now I'll tell you what exactly is this fiscal deficit. So fiscal deficit is actually the difference between overall expenditure and revenue. Okay, so excluding the interest payments, so that is fiscal deficit. Okay, so interest payments in the sense that, for example, India as a country, if it has borrowed some money from any other foreign country, right? So on that particular money, India have to pay interest rate. Now interest rate, right? So which is being borrowed by India from other countries. Now fiscal deficit is total expenditure minus revenue, and you will get total expenditure minus revenue minus the total interest payments, and you will get the fiscal deficit. Okay, so we'll understand that in a very brief manner. Okay, so the central government's fiscal deficit during 23-24 stands at 5.6% of the GDP. So in fact, it was better than the previous estimates of 5.8%. Previously, it was estimated that the fiscal deficit stands around 5.8% of India's overall GDP. So that is actually debt of India. Okay, so 5.8%. So this is the reduction in the fiscal deficit in India is primarily because of the higher revenue realization and lower expenditure. So according to the data released on Friday. Now, what is the legislation related to the fiscal management in India? Okay, so what is the legislation which is being framed with respect to the fiscal responsibility and budget management framework? So we have a fiscal responsibility and budget management framework that was instituted in the year 2003. And in fact, the overall objective of the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act is to reduce the overall fiscal deficit in our country. So this was instituted in 2003, and it actually sets an ambitious targets for debt reduction. And in fact, it is also aiming to limit the general government's debt to 60% of GDP by 24-25. However, the subsequent fiscal trajectories of the government were actually deviated from this target. So in fact, the center's outstanding debt even surpassing the originally envisioned threshold. The overall debt of the central government is now surpassing a 60% GDP threshold. Now, FRBM Review Committee report has actually recommended a debt to GDP ratio of 60% for the general government by 2023, and it has been comprising 40% for the central government and 20% for the state government. Now understand that the general government debt should not be more than 60% so of the GDP that is mandated by the FRBM Act, right? So 60% of the GDP. Now this is the combined, both center and state government's debt should not be more than 60%, and that is why it is said that the general government debt as per the FRBM Act. Okay, so in the 60%, 40% of the debt for the central government and 20% of the debt for the state governments. Now on this slide, there is it is clearly given the definition of the fiscal deficit. So when the government's total expenditure exceeds the revenue that it generates, excluding money from the borrowings. Okay, so sorry, excluding the money which is being borrowed. So that is known as the fiscal deficit, not interest payments. So if it is, I think, interest payments, that becomes the primary deficit. Okay, so we have to exclude the borrowings, so then that would become fiscal deficit. Okay, so that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel and also hit the like button. Thank you.